Good morning to our session. Welcome to our session this morning. We're going to be talking about smart manufacturing, why it's important to manufacturers, and how to get started today. With me, Jim Wetzel. Jim, this first. Oh, I'm first. Okay. Here, I'm VP of Education at SESME, the Smart Manufacturing Institute. I know a lot of you, but not everyone here, so welcome. We're going to do some interactive work today, so I hope you're up to it. With me today, we have Jim Wetzel.
Yeah, still wearing the same clothes. Look at that.
Yeah. It's fresh picture.
Yeah, so I'll just introduce myself. So Jim Wetzel, co-founder of Next Gen Group and contributor of the whole smart manufacturing SESME acceleration roadmap tools. We'll talk briefly about later. Prior to that, I was the interim CEO of SESME to get it launched and started for a year. And prior to that, I was at General Mills, director of engineering for 32 years in food and bev. And so my background on that side, from a manufacturing perspective, I ran maintenance and reliability for the organization, systems improvement, process engineering, energy, sustainability, technical competency and achievement in those groups as well. And then I had all of the process and packaging domain experts, so all the pure technologists, and then the control and information architecture for all of the factories and plants.
Wow. So this is why I like Jim first anyway, because a lot of years of experience up here, take advantage of it. And we know that there's a lot of experience in this audience. So we definitely want this to be an interactive session. I got over 30 years in manufacturing, industrial engineer, aerospace engineering, highly regulated industries, MES, quality, MRO. So, in how to integrate all those systems. Our agenda today is to talk about the competitive need for smart manufacturing, to leave you with some ideas of why a new mindset is needed to make smart manufacturing successful, to make it sticky. So we're going to discuss some of those ideas. We'll talk about some synergies of things like lean and smart manufacturing. We'll talk briefly about some of the building blocks to just review and make sure we're all on the same mindset when we talk about smart manufacturing. And then we're really going to spend more time on what do the first steps look like for manufacturers. So that's our general agenda.
And Conrad, maybe I'll add in, I'll start with maybe the punchline. As we go through what we're going to talk about this morning, we're not going to talk about technology. We're going to talk about why smart manufacturing can really dramatically change your business outcomes. And what we've learned over the last few years is that if you lead with technology, you have a high probability of failing in delivering against your objectives. And that statement has turned out to be true in every engagement I've done in the last 3 years. And SESME has this thing called the Smart Manufacturing Mindset, and there's a series on that. I'd encourage you, if you haven't seen those podcasts and looked at those, take a look at those. Because one of the things we're going to really try to drive home in here is not only do you need it, and yes, it's enabled by technology, but if you're not going to make the culture change to make that happen, you'll have technology that is not delivering on the goods. So keep that in mind as we kind of go through this. And I think you'll probably find some potential blind spots in your current thinking that will hopefully recenter you.
Okay. And Justin, you can get us started on the clock there. So just briefly, because I think most people here know, SESME is one of 17 manufacturing USA institutes. We're the one focused on smart manufacturing. And the important takeaway on this slide is that we're an ecosystem, right? The manufacturers, but a lot of the folks that are supporting the manufacturers, including system integrators, vendor apps, academia, the machine builders. So that's something to keep in mind as we move forward through this, how that ecosystem, you'll hear that repeated tomorrow a lot, but how we're supporting manufacturing. And these tools we're going to talk about today and this thinking is all part of how we're supporting manufacturers.
Just a quick add on that as well. Imagine that you were given the task to lift up all manufacturers in the United States of America. That's what SESME is trying to do. They're not trying to lift up 12, 20, top 100, Fortune 100 or 200 companies. Yet, if you look at what the market is currently serving, the technology and vendor market, they're serving probably the top 1,000 manufacturers in the United States. 99% of manufacturers are underserved in this space because it's too expensive for them to get customers. So as we think about smart manufacturing, why it matters, we're going to be talking about the ecosystem of manufacturers, this concept of end-to-end, and how you bring everyone together in a manner that can be done in your lifetime. So if you think about lighthouses as an example, you hear a lot about lighthouses. A lighthouse project, there's no way you can do 400,000 manufacturers with a lighthouse mentality. You can do one every couple of years kind of thing to demonstrate competency or demonstrate success. If your mission was to lift up all, not in 100 years, not in 1,000 years, but to lift up 400,000 manufacturers in a short period of time, what would you do? And that's what we're going to be talking about.
So we have our first exercise. We're going to warm up with this first exercise. What we want you to do is, so this is geared to manufacturers. So if you're not a manufacturer and you work with manufacturers, maybe go back a few years to when you were in the manufacturing floor, or put yourself in one of the shop floors of the manufacturers that you've been supporting recently, okay, on their journey to answer this. Okay, but the question is, we want you in these sticky notes we gave you to describe examples of digital advancements in manufacturing in your company that you're proud of. Recent things you've done in the last 6 months, the last year, that you would say, this is advanced manufacturing, digital manufacturing, smart manufacturing. These are examples of smart manufacturing that we've been doing on our shop floor, okay? And we are going to come by and collect these, okay? And what we want is to start this conversation where, what is our starting point? What have we been doing? Okay. And yes, this is a workshop, so please participate. We're going to collect these, and we'll use these paper boards up here to start organizing them. Or I don't know if they'll stick to this. I think the paper will be the best. Okay, let us know as you finish, and we'll collect those. Thank you. Okay. Okay, greens are winning. Let me see. Greens are winning. You got some yellows there? Introducing digital work instructions. See, what do we got? Okay. Dashboards. Oh my God. Let's see. Dashboards, vision, check. Digital thread, okay. All right. Robotic material. Okay. All right. Okay. More stickies. Oh, the yellows are in a comeback. Okay. All right. Cloud storage. Well, data cloud storage. Cloud storage. Let's put that here. Implemented software and scanning sensor machine. Scanning, suspicion check. Scanning. For manufacturing. Assets, data collection. Okay. These are a little rinkety, so watch out. How you doing? Do we have all the stickies? Okay. All right. Here, you want to split that? Counterbalance, forklifts. I mean, OEE dashboards. Open automation, data collection. You got that? Oh, cloud or closed? Vision. Here, vision. Digital process using model-based definition here. Digital thread. Okay. So we're looking for patterns up here. That's what we're doing here. Going through, doing some logical groupings and see if we uncover some trends in here. Where are we? Thanks for participating. Good. Okay. 3M. Let's see. Like piano dashboards over here. Okay. So let's see some of the groupings of some of the things here. So I'll go right to left. Do you want to go left to right over there? But here we have several that are doing live dashboards, OEE, automation, smart manufacturing monitoring. Okay. Spinning up a whole new, okay. Understand the needs of our clients. Let's see, discovered life beyond OEE. I love that. I love that they discover life beyond OEE. We have another grouping here on vision checks. Love that. Vision systems. We have some digital and-on systems and digital metrics and boards. So a little trend here with boards, metrics. I think over there were some data collection ones on monitoring and automating data collection sensors, process control. Here we go. See, cloud data storage, digital work instructions. Then we get into some different things here. Digital work instruction, digital thread. Here's digital modeling, process modeling, definition, automated CNC, 3D scanning. And wow, using AI to optimize tool replacement. Okay. What do you have? Mhm.
outcomes from this discussion will be summarized and shared with us later, or?
You're welcome. You want to do it? I'll get you the picture. So the session is being recorded. Okay. We'll see. We usually don't because we value the discussion. So this is just to really get us started in the discussion. So see it as but keep in mind what the themes that are coming up here because we're going to use it in the discussion coming up.
Okay, over here we have robotic material handling. We have enhanced data collection, CNC laser and plasma cutting, shop floor data collection, end of firefighting and maintenance through adopting AI-enabled prescriptive monitoring tools, workforce safety and reliability, implementing AR and VR training to give hands-on experience without shutting down a production line, OPCU implementation in 2 of their sites, showing the manufacturing operations teams why and how configuration of SAP and other systems truly impacts them and why they should care. Closed loop process control to reduce or eliminate offline quality testing. Open standards-based automation, cybersecurity certificates across R&D, and supply chain digitalization for resiliency. I've started openly communicating the need to consolidate data from different systems to enable smart manufacturing use cases. So as you think about that, again, part of this is it's an icebreaker. Part of it also is to demonstrate there's a bit of a trap in this Post-it note. Anyone see what the trap is? Simon. Mm-hmm. They're projects. They're also, and again, it's a bit unfair for me to say some of this, but I will anyhow.
We do a lot of that.
Yeah, we do a lot of that. But in this space, you're not gonna tell the full story here. But when you choose to pick the story that you are willing to tell in a public environment, you're telling almost all of these, not all of these, but almost all of these, are telling the story of some technology you implemented. There's very few things on this page that are talking about the business outcome that you achieved. I mean, there's a couple here that says, maintenance, I'm eliminating firefighting and maintenance through the use of technology. So I want you to think about that, let it soak in a little bit, that, our nature, and maybe because most people in this room are engineers or somehow trained technically, that you are problem solvers. You are people that have been trained to apply technology to solve some problem. And it's not your first step out of the box to talk about the business impact you made. And that's the hardest thing for us to undo. So a number of you in this room are certified acceleration roadmap people, and one of the things I try to do when I teach that class is break you down and to think about, don't lead with the technology that you're implementing as the story that you're trying to tell. Because we're trying to figure out smart manufacturing and why it matters. If you talk to an executive about smart manufacturing and why it matters, first of all, they don't know what smart manufacturing is. And quite honestly, why do they even care? Why do they care what the term is? It's not really that relevant. The second is, the last thing they want to hear from you is about how smart you are with all the technologies you've implemented. Oh, I did robots on this. I don't care. Tell me in my terms.
Well, I might care.
You might care.
I might care.
Tell me in business terms what you're trying to achieve or accomplish. Did you improve the throughput? Did you drive the quality? Did you enable a new business model? Did you connect in real time to a supplier so decisions could be made automatically instead of waiting to end a month to run your business?
I do care more about that.
Yeah, so part of this, and we're all guilty of this, is that we like to talk about the technology that we executed, because it's tangible and it's easy to put on a piece of paper. And quite frankly, in most of our companies, we probably don't even know how to value the contribution that we made, right? So I came from General Mills, you know, and I've done a lot of things over the years. What was the value of Project A? What was the value of Project B? Well, when you try to ask an accountant what the value of that is, what happened? Nothing in your organization stays the same while you're executing a single project. There's millions of projects going on at the same time. There's also external things going on at the same time. So how can you honestly say that your project drove this? You might have been riding the tide and going with some other project that wrote it, and your project might have been negative in gain. Right? So I just ask you to keep thinking about this. We've got a couple other exercises we're going to be drilling this in some more.
Also think about the range of projects that we had here. Initiatives from work instructions, AR/VR, to automated data collection, to dashboards and metrics, right? Well, that one is a collector kind of thing, but some of these robotics projects, actually, this group did really pretty good. There's some digital thread, and these metrics could be ways that we're bringing data together in the enterprise. But a lot of times, we can end up with data silos. So keep that in mind too. If we work projects independently, we could be making progress here, there. These islands of innovation, we call that. But
yeah, here's what's interesting about this list as well. Conrad and I have been doing this session for a couple of years, right? Mm-hmm. The richness of what's on the Post-it notes is dramatically different than it was 2 years ago. Yeah. The flavor of what people would put up here, and another reason we do this as an icebreaker, is to explain what smart manufacturing is, because people don't know what it is. And so we say, just put down what you think you've done digitally, and what we'll talk about is that, quote, under the category of smart or not, or is it Industry 3.0 or Industry 4.0, or when people get all hung up on how I should look at my stuff. And most of these are in the 4.0 smart manufacturing umbrella. There's a couple on here that are 3.0 kinds of things where you're doing some basic control. But most of these have really advanced quite a bit.
Yeah, when we do the regional events, maybe with smaller manufacturers, medium manufacturers, the list looks a little different.
And it might be because of the audience, right? We're at the SESME annual conference. Yeah. So you probably have people in here that are more advanced.
So you want to talk to this one?
Yeah, you know, we ask this question through the process that we do is we think about this first thing: who thinks your plants ran well yesterday, right? And people will anecdotally say, yeah, things went well. And then I'll push back on them and say, well, yeah, but how do you know? How do you know? What indicator are you using? And in the old school, 10, 20 years ago, how did you know if your plant was running well? I think the universal approach from small and medium and large manufacturing organizations was we managed by walking around, right? So a plant manager, a production leader would walk the floor, would understand exactly kind of what's going. They talk to people, right? So it was gut feel. It was using your 5 senses to kind of figure out this question of how you doing. Because our information systems were siloed, right? So if I asked you a holistic answer of how you doing, the follow-up would be relative to what? Relative to quality, relative to some performance measure, relative to cost, relative to safety, relative to what? And on the right-hand side, when you think about the relative to what have we been guilty of historically? Answering those one at a time. Having a system in place one at a time for that specific thing. We have an OEE calculator, or we have a productivity meter, or we have a visualization andon, or we have a dashboard, or we have, right? But collectively, We're just trying to say, how you doing? But when we go to answer that question, we've come up with these individual packages or silos or applications that it becomes very difficult to answer that. And so smart manufacturing is trying to change that.
And the key word here is yesterday or today even, but you know, as opposed to 3 days ago or last week, right? Are we working with real-time data? Wow. Okay, what happened?
So Jim, that was mostly directed at a person responsible for
Keeps
their own
kicking you out, huh?
Mm-hmm.
And I
Is the
think
network flaky?
all those same questions you have on the right side are important to the OEM who wants to know everything about their parts and their suppliers.
Yeah. So so we'll pile on that a couple places. One, like in your past roles as a general manager, all your plants. And if I wore my supplier hat, how are the pieces of equipment that I'm contributing to your ecosystem, how are they doing? And what's that world look like? That's really a messed up world, because a lot of advanced manufacturers will buy off-the-shelf OEM equipment, put it into their ecosystem, heavily modify it, and then run. And they don't want to ever share information with that supplier, because it's a competitive advantage to run off-the-shelf equipment at a higher tier than what the market can purchase at it. So how does an OEM manufacturer actually provide help to you? In some cases, they can't.
So we talk about, hey, all you got to do is put some sensors, edge, cloud, AI, big data, just that's all you need to do. Install some of these things together, do some user acceptance, trust, think about interoperability value, right? And we use these words, concepts, and all like just press the easy button and make it happen, right? That's what Sesame is all about.
Well, here's the challenge, right? How do you make how do you make the right thing to do easy? So you're in this great session today, but if we knock down that wall, they're going to go through this right-hand stack of stuff and try to convince you that it's easy. Your head's going to blow up. It's way easier than it ever used to be, that's for sure, no question about that. But I'll tell you what's easy. I'll give you an example of what easy might look like. How many people have a video doorbell? Was that easy to install? No. Anyone say yes?
You had to do some coding?
Yes. Okay. So think about a video doorbell, because it's an interesting example compared to industrial automation. A video doorbell has all this stuff on the right-hand side. It's got a sensor. It's got a camera. It's actually connected to the cloud. In the cloud, they're actually running AI. So you can determine, is there a package there? Or do I recognize this person? All that kind of stuff. And then there's all sorts of analytics that you're not seeing behind the scenes that the company's using on their behalf. What did you have to do as a consumer to actually make that happen?
Okay.
Yeah, connect it up, right? Plug it in, or not even plug it in. I mean, half of them now are battery operated, so get it power. You don't have to connect it by wire anymore. You can just wirelessly connect to your internet.
And these devices discovered each other.
They either discover each other, or there's a QR code on the back, you take a picture of it, and all this IP address spoofing crap that everyone's talking about, right? That's just magically done for you. Imagine that world happened in industry. Imagine that you could just do this right-hand side easily. That's what they're trying to do on the other side, and talk about smart manufacturing profiles and basically a concept of plug and play. But we're there in the consumer market way ahead of us being there in the industrial market. So it gives you hope and reason to believe that that's going to go down a good path next door. That's going to go down a good path. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of stuff under the curtain.
So we're not there, but to to implement everything they're talking about there, we need to justify it to our management. We need to understand the why it matters. So there are plenty of reports out there that let us know that manufacturers, the industry leaders, larger manufacturers out there, are actually having benefits from these initiatives. So the ones here, I like this one, is more on the recent side, but this one went after manufacturers that is by Tech Clarity that implemented a platform. Simon, if you want me to use your stuff, you gotta give me a slide once in a while. And so, it's, but they're achieving results. I mean, this is greater than 30% improvements in areas, right? Just by having that visibility, bringing the workflows together, that extra collaboration and orchestration. So results are achievable. We have from LNS research these also. And you can see the trends. What I like about this one is showing the trends changing over time and how more and more people are achieving results with these type of initiatives. So if you're not doing something, you're falling behind. That's the general message. Yeah.
Conrad,
Oops.
Bart question.
Yeah, sorry,
More a reflection, right? On the previous slide, I think, yes, we talk about business impacts, but to me, even bigger business impact is the true business and customer impact, right? So how you can use smart manufacturing to accelerate the time from product development to manufacturing tech transfers, accelerate the time to market. So really accelerate your launch of new products and time to
yeah,
market.
yeah.
Personalization also of products and solutions. Resilience, right? When we talk about supply chain resilience, a lot is driven by smart manufacturing, sustainability. So this to me is even the next frontier of business and customer impact versus some of the things I put on the slide.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the big deal, in my opinion.
Yeah, there's a lot of potential. Here, Tom?
Yeah, I didn't realize you were taking questions already.
Oh, this is interactive, so raise your hand whenever, and if we're running too slow, I'll
Go back one slide then, if you don't mind.
yeah.
One more.
Okay.
Okay, never mind. One more.
One more.
No, when you brought up,
Which one you want?
yeah,
Here.
right there.
Yeah?
You brought up the doorbell
Uh-huh.
as being an example of how easy it should be to implement the technology, right? I can. Can you hear me? Yep. All right. I use my pulpit voice. So you brought up the example of the doorbell as being the ring doorbell as being the easy way, right? The hands-free, do-it-yourself way to implement the technology, and said, this is where we need to go, right? But when I look at that, right, what I see is I see a couple of companies, right, that essentially own the key part of the infrastructure that's required to make your smart house work. And it's not that they don't necessarily open up their ecosystem so that other people can play on it, right? But opening up that ecosystem often requires, now that you have a secondary application or a tertiary application that talks to your doorbell, which then in turn will talk to, if I'm primarily a Google household, right, or an Amazon household, which will talk to that application, and you end up having a necessary link chain, right, in order to translate the, like my smart light bulbs are Mercury, right? But I have to run a Mercury
Tom,
on my
we
phone in order to connect it into that ecosystem, right? So I guess what I'm saying is as we're moving forward, how do we avoid essentially creating a couple of large corporate information silos that everybody has to work with in order to make these easy plug-and-play ecosystems feasible?
Okay. All right, as we dive in, hopefully that will start uncovering itself. But thanks you. But that was really just setting the vision that we want it to be easier than it is today. Hmm? And what we've found is that, to the point that is not easy, is that we actually see a lot of companies stuck in what I call industry 2.5, never mind 4.0, but you know, like paper and glass. They're just starting to move off of paper and maybe put that same form they had on paper, put it online, and then move to industry 3.0. We've been doing that in a lot of, especially larger companies, putting in all these PLCs, starting to integrate system, implement MES, ERP. But to realize Industry 4.0, we really need the integrated enterprise. So we need that data to flow and connect to the enterprise. Now, we had some good projects there that were towards that.
For kind of observation, if companies are at kind of 2.5, can they leapfrog to 4.0, do you think, or do they have
Yeah.
to go to 3.0?
So that's a great point. Thank you. Can companies leapfrog? I think they can, and I think we are seeing some. And in some ways, the small and medium opportunity is to leapfrog. I think so. What do you think about that?
Well, I'll answer it differently, maybe. If you think that how people have classified Industry 2.0, 3.0, 4.0 as a technology journey, I'd say you can leapfrog. If you said no, it's really about what you're doing with this and how you're changing your business, I would say no. And here's why. And we'll talk about this later today. A key element of making the technology stack successful is having the culture, the mindset, and the basic core processes of manufacturing in place. We have seen time and time again that if an organization that comes to the table that says, I would like to do X with technology, and then you find out they don't have a continuous improvement plan. Operators don't understand how to do their job. I mean, basic foundational manufacturing competency, if it's not there, digital is not going to save you.
So leapfrogging in terms of goals, but there are building blocks that you can now skip.
So does that make sense, Steve?
I know, agreed. But I do think that especially when you look at the PLCs and CAD, you can do a lot of that in parallel to Industry
Yeah.
4.0.
The difference is,
Security at 3.0 to go to 4.0.
Yeah, so for sure. So here's a classic example is look at India and look at telephones. They leapfrog. They didn't have to put in wired lines, landlines. They leaped to mobile cellular technology. So there's a lot of leaps. Even at General Mills, I started putting in Ethernet-based PLCs when they first became available in 1993. What would I do today? I could do that. I could do that job today in probably 1/10 of the effort that it took to do that 20 years ago. So I think technology has enabled some either leapfrog or big steps to be made.
but when we talk about mind, yeah. Yeah. So this was about the perspective that this is a perspective that we've had with these labels of what's Industry 3.0, Industry 4.0, and it is like a historical perspective, right? That has changed. And the main thing is that the goals that we have now in Industry 4 have moved forward. So even if we're using PLCs, MES, ERP, we should be looking at them with a different lens of really further integrating the enterprise. Yeah.
I've seen this image a lot of times, right? 2 by 3, 4. Well, one of the things that we've always struggled with, not just where I'm now, but in previous companies, is trying to explain this, because you put this in front of leadership level, executive level, and they say, well, we have PLCs and we have an ERP, but we still have paper batch records. How can you guys tell us the journey is this if the journey isn't straightforward, right? It's not just about leapfrogging, but it's the fact that PLCs have been around for 20, 30 years.
So great question. So how do we talk to this? The answer would be, and where you're hinting and Simon's hinting, is don't talk about this. And we're going to talk about smart manufacturing, and that's what we want you talking about, because that has, right, some traps in that, like Simon was mentioning on the technology side. Yeah. Well, some people are stingy with their data. Okay. Okay. Well, glad to use it. So here's some data on the fact that a lot of manufacturers are stuck in this pilot purgatory, right? So one of the things we're trying to get out of and avoid is, how do we implement these initial projects and do corporate rollouts? How do we make it easier to move forward and lower the barrier so that we don't get stuck there? And we feel the stuff we're going to talk about next here is part of that. We've been putting our heads to it, and how do we make smart manufacturing sticky?
Yeah, go ahead and build that. So, well, before you build it, so anyone know, we'll play games with numbers here. Anybody know what the 70 and 95 are for?
No guessing?
Depending on your source of research, 70 to 95% of the digital transformation projects fail to meet their objectives.
Oh.
Why? PPT, people know what that is? People, process, and technology. And so if you take a look at people, process, and technology, survey says that over 90% of the failures to achieve your objectives are due to people and process.
But yet we spend a lot of time talking about technology.
And here's what, just a couple points to add. Personal bias, so this is my personal opinion. Why are we doing pilots?
Makes them feel good about low cost, low risk. If it's a pilot, it's perception, I think, most of the time.
Perception.
Yeah, so what's wrong with you that the only reason the only way you can convince somebody is you kind of compromised yourself and said, well, then let's do a pilot. Are you trying to evaluate the technology? Well, maybe because you did a pilot, you didn't have failure. Well, that could explain the data. Bart?
Yeah, I agree. Also, actually don't like the word pilot, but I like the term test and learn, right? We call it test and learn, not pilot.
Test and learn, okay.
When you figure it out for 80%, Pareto, you already do a test and learn to kind of test your technology part that it works for that particular business situation and reap the value. And then you bring operation in to start learning about how this will translate for people and process. And then you go to broader deployment and scaling. So this test and learn approach, a bit like early on in the process, I think has proven to me successful.
But you're testing and learning the technology.
Well, yeah, so keep going with that, because you think about, as an example, if you research what goes on in the military and all of the test exercises a military goes through, whether it's flying airplanes or, going on the field or whatever. What do they do after they do their exercise, after they do their test?
Hot water.
He said hot wash. But it's a debrief. They use a PVED process, plan, brief, execute, debrief process to go through this stuff. And when they're doing their mission training and they're doing their testing, yes, technology is there because it's part of the exercise, but most of their faults are happening in people and process. So a certain person didn't do this job, didn't understand, didn't, Dan.
Yeah, I know pilot has become a dirty word, right? And I think we've all lived there. I like test and learn is good. I prefer experiment. You say we're going to run an experiment. Because by saying that, you have to do a lot of the process. You have to say, I'm going to have a control group and an experimental group, right? I'm going to tell you what my hypothesis is ahead of time in terms of the value I hope to achieve. And failure is an option, and expected. Happens all the time in experiments.
But think about this. Were you really that uncertain about the results going into that? Are you really uncertain about that technology? Because I would counter that we're in a place where technology is way proven and you can make any technology work.
Bob?
Okay, and maybe that should be our new assumption.
But the experiment includes the people in the process. Yes.
So you're saying let's
Yeah.
experiment on people and process.
And so that's one of the difference makers.
Yeah.
And Bart, you've mentioned that, and Bob's now mentioned that when you think holistically about what I'm trying to pilot,
Yeah.
my message here is we've always been in the groove that we're testing technology. We need to go beyond that and really evaluate, are our people and our processes in place for the technology to actually deliver on the objectives that it has? Or are we going to be submarined by what happens with people and process? Tim?
The issue that I see is that if you're trying to experiment broadly and look at the impacts across your organization, if you do a pilot on a single machine or a single process, you're not going to change the way that your entire engineering staff works. You're not going to change the way that your entire maintenance staff works because you only have this live on one machine. So there are definite limits to how much experimentation you can do with the people in the process if you only put this in on a limited space.
And never mind the cultural commitment, you haven't made it. So a different way to look at it is, or we could make that cultural commitment, say we are going to do X, Y, Z. We're going to go about it this way, and if the technology fails along the way, do you throw the whole thing away? No. You have the commitment that you're going to, I'll just pivot on the technology side, but I'm still going after that initiative.
That's why you don't do one test and learn, right? So you have, for example, you want to do condition-based maintenance. So what you do in the test and learn thinking is you look at different vendors that provide a solution for condition-based maintenance. So you do different test and learns with different vendor solutions on the same business problem, and you go to that process PPT for that solution on a specific machine, and you do it on different machines, and you bring the learning of this, whatever, 5, 10 test and learns together, because it's all about that one business problem.
Oh my God. So if you describe that problem to a manufacturer, like 100 employee manufacturer, you think they can do that? Or you would make a different recommendation? Okay, yeah. Okay, so yes, so depending on the scale of your business, there's different initiatives that might work. But as we try to go more into small and medium, we need to think differently a little bit. In the back?
I'm trying to outlaw the use of the word solution with respect to a tool, because that's the trap we're all in. Like, transformation starts with change of culture, change culture, you change language. So, ask anybody who works for me or with me, when they say when they say a piece of software or a widget is a solution, they're going to get a stink eye, because the
tool, and I will not say solution, but I mean with the tool, the software, the hardware. But just say the tool, put it at the end of the sentence. So instead of saying, we're going to go use X, Y, Z to digitally enable our frontline workforce to do TPM, say that part up front, use a lot of words.
Fantastic, fantastic. Okay, everybody got that? But because that one's an important point there.
Out of curiosity, when this works, does anyone know the vendor's name versus when it fails? Everyone knows the vendor's name?
I mean, the vendor's name isn't going to not come into the conversation because we take shortcuts. But when we're trying to change the way people are thinking, and if we really go into this right,
Yeah.
we shouldn't let anybody get away with taking a shortcut and describing what we're doing.
Yeah.
Because there's room for misalignment.
Yeah.
It's something
Yeah.
we've never done before. Eventually, the words change. So the things that have been successful, we talk about them in a way that might not make sense outside of the organization. But inside the organization, the things that have been successful, when someone says X, everybody knows what that means.
Okay.
It was capsulated.
So talk about solutions within the context of the outcomes that were achieved, if at all, and avoid the word solution.
So I know you've all been staring at this as we've had this kind of side conversation, but the top 12 reasons of why digital transformations have failed. Look at number 1. Alignment to business outcomes. We've got a lot of technology that's put out there that we don't even know the business outcome it's trying to achieve. And we'll test that out with this group. Lack of awareness within the organization. So one of the things I do is I do an assessment process with these companies, and it's been eye-opening to find out that, especially, this is more in a larger company. I went into an organization, large company, they had 6 manufacturing plants. In the 6 manufacturing plants that they had, the most advanced capability was in plant A. When I interviewed plant A, they said they had the least advanced infrastructure in the plant that had the most capital and the most investment in infrastructure. Seem kind of contrary? The IT people were doing all this stuff behind the scenes and never told the plant manager. So when you talk to the operation folks, oh, do you guys have fiber? I don't think so. Do you have the most advanced control system? I don't know what you're talking about. Do you connect this with that? I don't even know. And so when we reported this back, the plant goes, they've never told me. Again, a big company, a lot of this stuff is back office. A lot of this stuff can be done behind the scenes. It's digital. You don't have to communicate to anybody. And so this, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt, but it goes back to that point on leapfrogging, because that you go to that other slide, and I don't want to take you all the way back, but we talked about you go 2.5 to 3.0 to 4.0. How can you leapfrog from 2.5 to 4.0? I think a lot of that is what you're just talking about. If you bring your IT culturally together with your OT, then you can start to make those sorts of implementations. It's not all being done behind the scenes. And so then you can start to drive the flexibility and the ease of use that OT's been experiencing, and IT's been experiencing into the OT. And you can start to make those rapid incremental changes.
Well, you want to be rapid, use what you have. We get so excited about this shiny toy syndrome. We walk down the aisle of a conference and say, that is fabulous. And you find out that you might already have that capability. We rebuy the same capability we've had numerous times, and then we deploy it, and we go through all this infrastructure churn, and then someone who actually knows the application that you have said, oh, you were trying to do that? We already know how to do that. Now, it might not be the best, it might not be, but you think about if you're really trying to crank things through fast, don't be distracted. Don't be in love and have tool envy and shiny toy syndrome. Understand what's going on in your own company, having that transparent.
And it could be that we skip some of the integration. For example, when they first implemented something, right?
This lack of control of external vendors. This topic that was brought up in the back of the room, and Simon commented on it as well, How come companies don't label their systems as their own? Anyone know what I mean by that? I'll use my background at General Mills. We started out and we put in distributed control systems. General Mills bought the first distributed control system from the Foxborough company. We actually did the purchase of that when they demonstrated their capability with cardboard boxes because they didn't have computers built yet to do a distributed control technology that we purchased. The label in the control room said Foxborough. When the control system was disrupted, probably by human issues, what got the blame? Foxborough. Foxborough. Then when we moved to PLC-based control, what got the blame? Oh, that Rockwell. And I go, when I took in charge of the control information group, I said, from this point forward, we're going to put our name on that. We're going to delabel the equipment. When the software comes up, we're going to ask for the software supplier not to have their brand on the screen. We're going to say General Mills dashboard. All of a sudden now, you're on the hook. You're the owner of this. That little shift, that small shift of branding it you versus branding it your vendor is a huge shift on this cultural mindset journey. To shift from an owner or from a rental where you're leasing equipment, you're leasing technology, and therefore you can blame them, to an owner that says, I bought this, I own it, I'm maintaining it, I'm evolving it, I'm responsible for the actions, everything coming from this system. In this control and information and Industry 3.4 and smart manufacturing space, we are afraid to be owners of the systems that we espouse. Shame on us. We need to change that.
They still call it the Wetzel dashboard.
Yeah, well, yeah, my name is on some things, both in the bathroom and on the plant floor. But you think about what it's going to make. To make a difference in a cultural shift, these are the kinds of actions that actually are super small, but super big in impact.
The good news.
Ask you to think about that.
The good news is that the tactics we're going to talk about today, and we address a lot of these issues. Okay, so from alignment to awareness to the shiny toy syndrome. So we're going to talk about a systematic way to approach this journey. And we want to start with establishing a new mindset. So
I'll go through this one.
Okay, go ahead.
You guys are going to be sick of hearing from me today. This mindset, this shift thing, we've done multiple shifts in our career. When you're as old as I've done multiple shifts. First shift we made was in quality in the 80s, right? We did this shift of, like the automotive industry was getting their ass handed to them from Japan auto companies. So all of a sudden now quality became job one. Quality was important. Quality. Then American manufacturing woke up to safety and taking safety to a different level to make sure that you went home with the same appendages that you came in with, and that you really took this safety culture on, this safety mindset. And as an example, if you ever follow me going down a set of stairs, I'll be the person grabbing a handrail. If you watch me mow the lawn, yes, I'm the person wearing safety shoes so my feet don't get cut off. I also wear hearing protection when I'm doing that kind of stuff, because the safety mindset, the safety culture is embedded in me, and I think like that. When my wife used to stand on top of a chair to reach the high point in a cupboard, any guess what chair she picked?
No, she picked the chair that swiveled. And so at work, this safety mindset is drilled into to change the behavior 24 hours a day. I now personally have the mindset of smart manufacturing. I know Dean's got the mindset of smart manufacturing, and license plates and tattoos and everything that goes with that. And when you have this mindset, you see the problems differently. Have you ever walked the floor with an expert in reliability, like a reliability engineer? Or a energy guru? It's very humbling. I walked the plant, so I used to run energy, I used to run reliability and so on. We'd walk through a facility together, and I felt I was pretty seasoned and stuff. We'd walk through a facility, come back, compare notes. And I felt like I was on a different planet when I'm comparing my notes with these other folks. Oh, did you see the pipe was uninsulated? 40 feet away, they noticed that there's a section of insulation off a pipe. Oh, did you notice that the door was cracked this much and air was leaking? Oh, did you notice the pressure in the environment was pressurized so that all air was flowing out versus in? I'm going like, what? And the reliability engineer said, did you hear that? Hear what? Did you hear the hissing? We got air leaks in our air compression lines. Did you hear the bearings? Did you see the misalignment on the motor shaft? All that stuff was visible to me. But when I look at smart manufacturing mindset, what am I looking for? Streamlining work. Where's my data coming from? How am I going to use it? What's the value proposition? I go and walk the floor and I see a piece of paper. Instead of saying, is it all filled out, I ask, what's it for? What do you do with it? As you think about the advent of artificial intelligence, that use of the paper potentially represents a potential new opportunity. I worked in a plant for 3.5 years making Wheaties. I happened to be in the plant, a employee that was on the factory line, worked there for 35 years, an operator of a Wheaties extruder, actually. And at the end of their career, I didn't have the heart to tell him at his retirement party. I said, I'm thinking about what this fellow did for a job. He adjusted equipment. He was a machine tender, essentially. And for 35 years, wrote down every day, every shift, every hour, the unit operating conditions of that piece of equipment he was tending to. What he didn't know was that piece of paper was collected by the shift supervisor at the end of every day, end of every shift, went into a folder for that day. The folder went into a banker's box. Banker's box went down to quality control department into a big room. And after 7 years, we threw it away. Never to be seen or heard from again. Well, how would you look at that problem today with a smart manufacturing mindset? There's gold in those hills. Mm-hmm. Mining that nugget of that, first of all, you'd say, why is a expensive employee writing it down, right? So you'd automate some of those tasks. But put that aside for a second. If I had that information, that wealth of information about how my factory ran and what the conditions are to drive that resulting quality, and now I've got unprecedented artificial intelligence capability to mind it, analyze it, pattern it, and determine if there's anything of value in here that could find the best set points and sweet spots of how I should operate, that becomes transformational.
Now, Jim, changing mindset is hard. So it's not enough for us to say, we're changing mindset, we're changing culture, right? Culture has gotten to this point in that company because certain things were working, and part of what we need to message and what Jim was sharing in that example, right, that what worked and got us here today might not be the same thing that's going to get us 5 years from now, right? But to do that it's important that management, right, be on the forefront of showing, of demonstrating, of being the exemplar of the culture, and bringing those examples up, bringing the teams together to go beyond their normal, area of responsibility, to look outside and see how is that data used beyond that first use. It's just easy when you get up in the morning and decide what route you're going to take to work. Do you go like, oh, the weather here looks, I can see there's no rain today, it's Monday, I know what the best route is for Monday, I've done it for years this way, I'm just going to get on the road. Or today, do you make your decision and the first thing you do is look at the GPS in the morning and decide, well, is there construction ahead in my route? Is there a traffic accident in my route? And you expect to see that data real time on your phone and then make your decision based on the real-time data, right? And so that's the kind of shift that we want to happen in our factory.
What I'm super excited about, and this is why I'm not a huge fan of skipping over some things, you're going to hear a lot more about digital lean as we think about this mindset shift and how you can actually take continuous improvement methodologies along with this new mindset. And I'll steal from continuous improvement language. As you think about what you see when you're walking the factory, this eliminate, simplify, and automate is super important, right? So when you're looking for these opportunities, you're looking for that gold. You're trying to understand this piece of paper or what people are writing down. How do I eliminate, simplify, automate?
So we want to go beyond that continuous improvement and these tactical ways of doing technology projects. And we want to move to a more strategic way to look at them. That's where we're leading to.
So when we're talking about smart manufacturing and why it matters, we go into an organization and when we see this left-hand side, IT, OT being separate, digital seen as an opportunity, but they don't quite figure out what to do with it. Plant-driven tactical things, that's like playing whack-the-mole at the circus. A new problem comes up every day, just whack it down. Those are examples of where that culture and that mindset are, so you can go, okay, how far advanced are they? In spite of what they're telling you, look at what you're seeing. And most organizations today are on the left-hand side. Few organizations, very, very few organizations are on the right-hand side.
But there's data that shows that organizations that have shifted to the right-hand side and are thinking about technology more strategically are also, there's a correlation between success and...
Yeah, and that's the data you showed from our company that we can't mention any longer that had that data up there that Simon's going to correct.
So lean, so these mindsets that we have in the companies like safety, lean, there's no, so the culture is really layers of mindsets. So they're not, it's just one, there's several. We still need a lean mindset of reducing waste, but we need to layer a digital mindset on top of that and talk about digital lean techniques. So how do we use technology? I know when lean started, it was anti-technology, but now, and there's so many complex problems out there where the manual ways of lean for some things it still works fine, but for some use cases, we want to add technology on top of that. The other part of the mindset needed is that our factory is a node in a value chain. It's just to think beyond that, never mind beyond that one piece of equipment that you were talking about, but the plant, look at the plant as part of a whole value chain. And when we, with the lean mindset, think about the customer first and and backtrack all the way from what are we trying to achieve for the customer, that we are thinking about the benefits that we can realize if our factory becomes a digitally enabled node in a whole value chain. And I have executives that are thinking this way. So if you want to compete in the future of manufacturing, and Gartner has some of this data, right? Also, but we'll talk afterwards. So, but here Deloitte happens to actually share some of this data, but and we have. I'm going to pay for that, right? So, but there's numbers. There's numbers behind competing as an ecosystem, because you're increasing value to your customer, you're improving your perception in the marketplace, and delivering more value more effectively.
What's your definition of ecosystems here?
Okay.
Give me your definition.
So why I'm going beyond the word supply chain, because the other thing that's happening with digital and customer intimacy is that we're doing more platforms where the customer is involved, and we're adding services that go along with our products, not just throwing a product over a fence, but mining the whole product life cycle. So that ecosystem that needs to be integrated goes all the way into service providers. So not just your suppliers of material parts, chemical processes, and other subcontracts, but also all the way into delivering the product at the door of the customer, to servicing the product after it leaves the door. And more companies are bringing that in-house. So that's
so I'd add, Jeff, here's the thing that has shifted. When you start thinking about ecosystem, you kind of go, well, nuts. I can rarely get my act together in my own plant, let alone my own enterprise. And now you're saying I have to be participating effectively in an ecosystem that's beyond me, that's this internal and external. So if you just absorb that for a second, and you'd say, well, then what must be true? You'd say, I can't have siloed systems that only serve myself. What got me here, putting in that maintenance package that is just for me, putting in that ERP that's just for me, putting in that PLC that's just for me, will not get you where you want to go. And that's the point of this smart manufacturing journey. Don't paint yourself in a box. That's why next door, they're talking about the platform. And they're talking about plug and play and all that kind of stuff, is because for the first time, when you think ecosystem is your new problem, not your own plant is your problem, but your ecosystem is your problem, you're going to say, I can't have a silo. I have to have some sort of platform. And Tom, when you talked about this doorbell thing, when you start at the low level, the silo is your video camera, or your video doorbell. But the ecosystem in this particular case might be your house. How do I bring all that stuff together? How do I bring all that stuff together?
And then in some, the whole neighborhood is connected,
Could be.
right?
So this concept of a platform starts to emerge because the concept of an ecosystem is starting to matter. And so when I'm sitting there, and where it gets really scary, but hopeful and huge opportunity, but where it gets really scary is when I'm talking about an ecosystem, massive value creation. I think Bart from J&J, feel free to talk to him afterwards as well. And what he shared with us earlier this morning, this next generation of productivity, this next generation of capability building is where the true differential value is on this journey. But when you get further and further away from the source of data, what's the number one issue that we probably all have? Trust.
Do I trust the data that fed? Because I can't walk to the plant floor and validate it. Because I'm not even at your company. I'm in your supply network. I'm in your ecosystem. So I somehow have to trust that this data that you gave me that's telling me to respond in a particular way, in a differential way, make more, sell more, cheaper, better, whatever angle is, whatever lever is being pulled, I have to trust the information coming to me. And in my old company, we didn't trust the data coming from the factory floor. And we didn't trust the data coming from the equipment. We didn't trust the data coming from people.
Coming from a small manufacturing background initially, I think the trust equation is both sides actually too. Especially littler companies don't trust what their partner will do with the data.
For sure.
Won't
Yeah.
do with the data, right? Okay, I'm sharing it to you for a partnership. Now next year,
Yeah.
are you going to beat me up on margin because
That's
you learned
correct.
something about my business because I shared?
Yeah, so Danny, that's why, assume for a second, and I try not to kick those guys under the bus. Assume for a second that all the pipes were connected, data flowed easily, it was plug and playable, and all that stuff, all your dreams were fulfilled from the infrastructure technology approach. I'd go, we'd still F it up because we haven't gone through the journey of the cultural advancement. We haven't gone through the trust and relationship side that I can actually act on something that's in the pipe.
Which I think why it's so important, and one thing I always say is it's funny how, you know, all this is about connection, and before we connect data, we need to connect people. It's something I always say. But is one reason why, too, that kind of jump to transformation, I think is, you know, there's a lot of risk there because you skip those portions that really, you know, then on the technology side, great, you got there, but if you didn't bring your culture with you, it can actually cause more work, right? Because, I mean, the other, I hear kind of the 3 steps here, and it's a similar thing, you know, I've always said is stabilize, optimize, then automate. But, you know, in that same framework is, you know, building the steps there. Now you can do it fast, and, you know, I think that's the key, but not skipping a step.
That's
And
right.
that part is critical.
Yeah, and thank you for that. And the speed part is differential these days. I do have the possibility of doing this much faster than we've ever done this before.
Tom?
So, all this is, I mean, these are brilliant insights. I think everybody in this room agreed with that, right? And, you know, I look at manufacturing. Manufacturing is a lot like fire service, right? 150 years of tradition unimpeded by progress. Right? And so how do we communicate this entire philosophy out to the manufacturing community, tens of thousands of them, the vast majority of which are small manufacturers?
Yep.
Also, without scaring those small manufacturers, right, who tend to go to the technology evaluation because they're solving a particular problem. It's a small bite of the apple. This is a huge bite of the apple.
Yep.
At least when people take a look at it, and not scare them away, and not have it take another 10 or 20 years before we get a critical mass to start thinking along the lines of the philosophies that you're laying out.
Yep.
So part of that answer is this group of people here. So we need the ecosystem. We need that support for manufacturers, right? So they need that, start feeling more confident that they can execute because they have a support system. So that's part of it. But yeah, this doesn't work if you have weak links in your chain, right? So you need to bring those smaller, medium manufacturers along. You need to do what they're talking about there. We need to lower the cost of integration, implementation, connectivity. We need to have more playbooks, and you'll hear us tomorrow talking about some of our efforts to do that, but it's going to take a village. That's part of what I think is needed.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, if you look at, and I don't want to get controversial here, but if you look at politics, how about that for not controversial? let me double down. Religion. And if you look at politics and if you look at religion, you look at it historically, and you say, what methods do folks use to have fast, broad appeal on topics? Again, without getting into the details of what these are. The answer is community. As local as you can get. Right? So you think about the church, think about parties, political parties. They have national, well, they have world, they have national, they have regional, they have local, and then local in many things, like some churches, it becomes neighborhood, right? So you think about, okay, how can I get everyone rowing the boat? This concept of what we do in a community and what we do with people relationships and how we share our stories and how we tell our stories has been the thousands of years answer that has worked with people. And so creating this community, actually tomorrow afternoon we have a session on the community building that's going on, is our current answer. The question, the harder question is speed. And what would you do, how would you amp this up if you said, I want to do this in a decade? And again, not to get controversial again, but I'll throw one out there for you. Look at Elon Musk. He's on a mission. His mission was to transform particular industries and transform technology. He didn't have time. If you're in his way, you're out. If you can help and he can knock down barriers for you, you're in. Because he's got urgency that nobody else has. So when we talk about why smart manufacturing matters, and I think probably every person in this room has felt this somewhere in the last few years, the topic is not yet urgent for manufacturers to do something. They can kick the can down the road. They have. They have. They've been kicking that can down the road, and in many cases it's bit them, but in most cases it's not. And so you kind of go, how do we frame smart manufacturing so we can get the urgency to act and the urgency to transform? And my answer to that is, don't lead with technology. That is not the reason we're doing smart manufacturing. Lead with the business outcomes in the future state that you want to create, because you will have a compelling argument. And just one thing, I'm doing a workshop, I'm doing a bunch of work with my old company, with General Mills. And I did this last week with them. I think they might actually talk about it tomorrow. The amount of productivity gain and the amount of value creation that they viewed in smart manufacturing, doing it the old school way, thinking about it the old school way, they had $100 million, $75 to $100 million queued up as reasons to believe. Massive amount of savings. I stood in front of the group and I'm listening to the audience and I said, you know what you've just described? $1 billion opportunity. And so then we picked that apart. In the next 30 minutes, the whole room believed that everything that they described was $1 billion impact. They're talking about it as a $75 million impact. I said, you need to change how you're presenting your story. $1 billion gets your attention. $100 million gets your attention, but I mean $1 billion really gets your attention.
If you went to a decision maker to have $1 billion opportunity in a brand building company, they would go wildfire trying to make that happen. So community, storytelling, and framing it up in a way that can be digested and consumed.
Great.
One of those stories you can tell. I've run into a couple of companies where they have problems that they don't know how to solve. And if you can project this type of solution to that company, where they start to see those next steps as being different from what they've done before, you've got them.
Okay.
That makes things so much easier to take the next steps on. And then they can become, the example that you can use.
So help them build that story. Yeah. Okay.
Well, here's what's difficult. Again, because of, in general, where we all came from and the kinds of people we are, being technically oriented in this space, we don't want to say anything that wouldn't be true 100 times over. So, am I going to return $75 million? Yes, with 100% certainty. Am I going to return $1 billion? I don't know, but I think that's the size of the prize. A salesperson would come to the place and say, it's $1 billion, and they wouldn't even, they'd skip right over the 75, right? Because of how they're wired. They're talking about the opportunity, not the very tactical, narrowing thing. And part of that, organizationally, is different, is if the sales guy blows it and $1 million only becomes $500 million, he probably still has a job. If an engineer blows it, we've got history of taking engineers out when they don't do what they say.
Okay, so let's briefly talk about some building blocks. And I'll just go quickly over this, but it's important as establishing our groundwork here. What is smart manufacturing? What do we mean every time we say smart manufacturing? Just to make sure we're all in the same place. So smart manufacturing is the information-driven, event-driven, efficient, and collaborative orchestration of business, physical, and digital processes within plants, factory, and across the value chain. So information-driven because we want decisions based on data. Event-driven, we want that data to be as real-time as possible. We don't want it to be looking in the rear view window too much. We're doing it for purposes, and it's to increase efficiency, energy use, reduce our labor, but also this collaborative orchestration, and that's where it's very important ingredient, right? That's where we need to connect the whole enterprise. And we're bringing the physical and the digital processes in sync. And that didn't used to be always the case, that you actually look at your systems, look at your plant, and they reflect the same thing, right? So that's bringing that together. And we're, like we discussed, we want to go into the whole value chain, the whole ecosystem view.
So imagine that our Post-it notes look like those call-outs. That's part of the point in this first exercise of just getting what you had down. And then the second part, and this is what I teach in the certification class, most companies don't have a vision for smart manufacturing or a vision for digital transformation. So a cheat sheet or a starting point is take a look at this slide with the call-outs on it. Take the word smart manufacturing is off the page, put your company name in there, and read it back as bullet points. My company's vision is to have less time spent finding information or making sense from it and more time making informed decisions. My company's vision is to have decisions made when critical events occur or are predicted to happen instead of waiting until the next report is published. So this is in lieu of any kind of a strategy, it's a simple starting point to begin the discussion with somebody of what would my strategy look like for my company. Is you can start by taking those call outs, put their company's name in it, and begin that discussion.
And it'll morph from there.
it becomes part of that story. That we want to be outcome-based, but also we're starting to get into the how to achieve those outcomes. And data is key to all these initiatives we've talked about. Integrated and shared data. And a lot of times that data today is living in silos. So when we talk about data, it's important that we bringing all that data together into with context so that we can do root cause analysis, so we can do better decision making. That's very important. And we've hammered this, but another way to think about, don't lead with the technology, Internet of Things, cloud computing, artificial intelligence, all these are great technologies, but think of smart manufacturing as creating capabilities for your organization. Okay, so you need the capability of sensing, collecting data, connecting things so that you can provide insights, but we don't want to stop there. So this is what's key to making that smart. We're doing it to automate flow and control, to augment the workforce, and to connect our ecosystem. So we need to complete this loop to really have a smart system.
My advice, don't lead with the gray boxes. Don't lead with the how. Don't lead with the technology that's going to implement these things. Lead with the what you're trying to accomplish.
It's a big mindset shift, but I think it goes back to what the gentleman in the back said about, right? Like, the solution is not the tool.
Right.
Right? The military, when they buy something, they buy a capability. The military does not buy trucks. They buy the ability to move a person from point A to point B. And the form it takes may be a truck, right? But they, like, and so that is a good way to flip it back around and go from, oh, I'm piloting an MES system to no, I'm going to deliver a capability.
Well, yeah, and Daniel, with any luck, right, the gray boxes are all going to continually advance. So the way I did something like cloud computing or artificial intelligence, it's going to be different. We hope and probably believe it's going to be different in the future. But the capabilities that I need are more evergreen. They're going to stay with me. I still need this capability, however it got delivered.
So they're talking a lot about the technology over there. Here we're just going to mention, yes, you do need a foundation. You need infrastructure. You need to be able to gather data from all these data sources, diverse data sources. You can leverage edge, cloud. The methodologies to do these, the technologies are available. But how we thread it together and make that easier is what we're talking about. But make sure that when we're putting in place this platform for the organization, and obviously, Jim, you have a lot of experience doing this, but that you're thinking about how you're organizing that data. That's part of the platform. How are you making it available through API information models? And you're creating a layer that kind of loosely connects your data sources from your data producers. And that's going to be the secret sauce to making this agile and be able to keep evolving it as you go.
So here's a mindset shift for you. When you look at and when you personally experience the concept that you're looking for a platform, you're looking for some capabilities, you now are looking at vendors that might offer that particular thing, what's the first thing that you have to serve up to a decision maker? Cost. Any other thing you might have to serve up? Output, value. So, right. So you'll know when in your organization, you'll know when you've made a mindset shift when the first thing is value or business impact. If they lead with cost, keep your eyes wide open, you're following a trap. Because what's going to happen after cost? It's too expensive. Then you're going to jump into value, and you're going to underestimate everything because you don't want to be the $1 billion guy. You want to be the $75 million guy. And the next trap is ROI. When you start hearing those words, cost, ROI, you know that the culture and the mindset is not there yet.
The other thing that can happen is that if you start with value, you can use that to size your cost, because the truth is cost is a variable. So there are so many, a range of systems available, solutions, and from out of the box to custom and whatever. So think of it this way. If you know the value you're going after, you can size your solution to that value. So it's just a different way of looking at it.
So, kind of expanding on that, right? So, cost is a factor no matter what, right?
Yep.
So we talk about shifting the mindset. So if value is the first thing that, what's the value it brings to the organization? And you tell them it's, whatever. And go, okay, why is that more valuable than we're going to spend $100 million on a new factory, right? So how do you, I don't think the mindset is necessarily just, again, talk about value. It's about putting this value over other values.
Correct.
How do you drive that?
Correct. So if you started with the value equation versus the cost equation, first of all, you'd understand the impact that you hope to make. And you can debate and discuss and align the organization around the value possibilities that are here for this topic, this opportunity that you've got. Then the second round is, well, this opportunity versus that opportunity, right? So at the company I came from, we make branded products. So there always was the decision of, do I spend $100 million on upgrading a factory? Do I spend $100 million on launching a new product? Decision makers have to decide which path they want to go down. And your job is to make it as difficult as possible and to really sell your story about why you should pick me, right?
So there's a lot of guidance available at Sesame. The first principles was one that we put out there, kind of like a checklist of things to look into as you're making buying decisions, architecture decisions, but all different elements that you should be thinking about. I just put the QR code here, and we don't have time to dive into them. But a lot of the guidance that we're providing in terms of how to connect systems and how to architect systems, that's part of what we're doing too, to work on the technology side.
And what I'd add there is, screen scrape this one. If you're going to conferences, any kind of shows, print out the document that's attached with this. And when you walk the floor, if you're talking to vendors and whatnot, use this as a cheat sheet to ask them, so let's talk about interoperability and openness. Let's talk about security. Let's talk about scalability. And compare it to what the Institute says about what must be true. And you'll find that most of these vendors aren't very far along against this scorecard.
And it's time for a break.
It is. We're halfway done.
We're halfway there. Okay, so what do you think? 5, 10? When?
We can say 5 and it'll be 15.
Okay, so let's say 5. So let's say 5 minutes. Okay, a break. And but before you break, I do want to. I'm gonna during the break. Because it takes a little while. During the break, I want to make sure you connect to the network. Okay, so connect to the visitor network.
We're going to interactive phone vote on topics.
We're going to do some interactive digital exercises next. So make sure during the break you get that done. Connect to the network and bring this tool up. Don't do anything. Don't start voting or anything yet. But let me pause that.
And then another just housekeeping item. If you're not checked in, check in with the front desk. Make sure you're fully badged. It looks like everybody. Every day, everybody's got to recheck in, even if you're badged.
Okay. Thank you. See you back here in 5 minutes, and I got the clock running over there.
slides or something? Or monitor to have studies is open.
Sure, send me an email and glad to share some of these things.
Okay.
Most of these slides have like a source
Yes,
listed in there.
yeah, I was wondering, I saw them as the sources. This is why I wanted the slides, just to see if the sources are available or not.
Yeah, I tend to use open source. That's why I was joking with Gardner over there. Because Gardner doesn't make their sources open. So I know they have data here. That's why we're joking.
I guess I have to recheck in.
Yeah.
Where is it?
It's very,
Okay, he thought I wasn't here.
I love thinking because we are trying to do the same business,
Yeah.
same thing in Europe. This is a research institute where we have lots of people on manufacturing. We are connected to Allianz Industrie du Futur, which is the union of all manufacturing companies. And the idea is how to bring this to SME. And I think you have the right approach of thinking because I came here after, I missed the first half an hour. When I came, I saw something that yeah, I'd say, oh, this prototype stuff is something which misleads many people do prototype and all what they see in the prototype is they are not fit for the technology. They are not even related to technology. They see that it's too complicated for them. Then there is not the approaches to
It's to say, I'm going to change my business this way. I need to get here. And then it's like, you guys figure out how to do it.
yeah.
Find the technology or build it or something, but now when you do that, it's not like every technology project, it's a whole now become a whole different way of going.
Our institute is strongly connected to industry, and I see the only companies that are succeeding with digitization are those who start like where the CEO say, I believe in this, we do it or we are fired. It's that, the thing is,
And you tell them, this is how much money we got. So what, do something. What are you going to do? And that is totally flipping it. But that's not what we see. The typical initiative is not being run.
What is your plan?
yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I will
glad
follow
you're
the rest.
enjoying this.
Thank you.
I don't want to stay out there, I want to stay downtown. Downtown, so Chingwon. Like, no, like,
We all stay at the, in the middle of nowhere, like the home city.
so
There at
you
the
say that last time. I guess I should have stayed there.
But I mean, downtown is nice. Sorry, I didn't.
No, you can.
Downtown is
Just
nice.
pull up a chair. I thought it was so great.
Thank you so much. I mean, this is really great.
Oh, thank you.
By the way, I'm from DOE.
Okay.
And to
Hi.
office.
Conrad.
Yeah. Nice to meet you. Yeah.
I've seen you on Zoom.
Yeah. I manage all, battery manufacturing projects there.
What's your name?
Oh,
Just so I
China.
remember.
Yeah.
Okay. You manage the
Battery manufacturing. Yeah. Then last summer we released a funding opportunity for smart manufacturing for battery manufacturing.
Okay.
So now I'm here.
Oh no, we
Listen,
talked
want to
about
explore connection
studies. I
between
didn't.
smart manufacturing and
We really
battery
don't have
manufacturing.
time to describe
Yesterday,
this
many of
month.
guys are talking about
Yeah, I just feel like
about
I'm not
battery
very
plants
available.
for digital DNA of battery.
Oh,
Something,
yes.
yeah, so
Yeah.
that was
And
quite
that's
interesting.
in the supply chain.
Yeah,
When I'm back,
this is great.
I still need to wait for all the stakeholders.
A lot of work to do.
I know, but you guys are talking about ecosystem. My office is also
Exactly.
talking
You
about
need the
ecosystem.
ecosystem. And battery, you're going to need that, right?
Yeah, we really need to use this kind of technology for battery manufacturing. Otherwise,
All right.
yeah.
be the loop and I just, I don't know.
She's cool. Like, he and I work on stuff. She's really good at putting stuff together, but she's comfortable with last minute. She's comfortable just having it come together, which most of us are like,
I think we'll get there. I just have to. Get me some things. I don't think I have exactly the title, but I kind of told that I just take the lead and
Okay, folks. Want to get started? Hey, are you going out? Okay. A lot to cover today. How we doing? How are we doing, Mike?
Doing okay.
Yeah?
Doing okay. I made some notes. You got some new slides too.
I know what true north is. And most companies don't. And so then, excuse me. The second part is, if I knew where true north was, would I know how to get there? And that's trying to figure out the steps that must be true. So what do most manufacturers start with? Executing a project. We start with execution. We don't ask the question about where is this getting us. We're just solving a problem that someone laid on our desk. The suggestion here is we start with understanding where we're going, then we can figure out how to get there.
So we've developed a tool set, a methodology to systematically assess where you're at, determine the current state of the company, to focus on your priorities, establish that future vision, that story that needs to be told, reiterated, and then to start evaluating what solutions, what technologies are available to help you achieve those outcomes, and to organize all those into a roadmap for the next 3 years. And we believe that this methodology is something that is critical for organizations, and that typically might have a strategic roadmap that did not look at technology, just like, oh, we need to achieve these metrics, right? And then separate over here, the technology group had a plan of technologies they're rolling out, but they never got together to discuss what's the intersection of this, right? Why, what kind of IT projects, automation projects really help us achieve the business results we're looking for. So what we want is that discussion, that joint discussion to happen.
So if you learn nothing from today's session, learn this. Does SESME have an assessment process? Yes, we do. But what is the purpose of the assessment process? It's one of the steps to actually develop a strategic roadmap. To just do an assessment of you are here and then do nothing with it provides no value, other than it might be interesting benchmark, or you kind of just understand where you are. But that's not the mission. The mission is to get you to where you need to be. And so that's why it's a roadmap process, not an assessment process.
And we do have more information about this on the website, but this assessment starts with 6 dimensions, not 16, not 20, but strategy, culture, processes, systems, workforce, and supply chain. So we've developed this process so we can work with small, medium manufacturers. We have several here that have been working and executing, besides Jim, that we've been working with smaller manufacturers and going through these processes. There's some tools and automation available, some templates, because we're trying to make this a low-cost initiative where the manufacturer does most of the work themselves. They own this process, and the consultants, advisors are coaching the manufacturers into doing it themselves.
Yeah, so here's let's reinforce that, a point of difference. The deliverable is a strategic roadmap. There's many steps, and we'll talk about the steps going through this, but there's many steps to kind of get there, but the deliverables is a strategic roadmap. Delivered by yourselves. Delivered by your company. Facilitated by a certified acceleration roadmap professional. That's kind of the process that we're working here. So as we go and we talk about roadmap development and developing your strategy, this is not an approach where you're hiring a consultant to go and develop a strategy. They then go away, or they're poking and asking you questions and come back multiple times, and then ultimately they unveil a strategy and they go, here's your PowerPoint, here's your strategy. This is working with that company's team to take their domain knowledge, their experience, et cetera, to coach and facilitate them into developing a strategy they own, they manage, they nurture, they evolve.
So it's around, the whole framework is about starting on common ground, aligning the teams, having the tough conversations, right? So we're going to start with an exercise today, and we're going to kind of feel out where your organizations are on the journey. For this exercise, also put your hat of a manufacturer you're working with. Okay, if you're one of the consultants in the audience and stuff, just put one of the manufacturer's hat that represents a typical manufacturer you're working with. And we are going to vote on the first item here, which, sorry.
Do you need to do something up there?
Yeah, I need to switch.
So it should be showing up on your phone. Question number 1. Describe the level of vision your leadership has regarding the digitalization of manufacturing. Votes are coming in. We got 12.
How do you get it to accept, like hit the button and then hit send?
You don't have like a submit or something?
No, there's no.
Maybe scroll down a little bit.
15 votes are in.
Oh, there it is. Okay, it didn't want to load.
So there should be a vote button there.
I know we have more than 15 people in here.
Okay, we're gonna wait. Let's get a few more in there.
Oh, there we go, 22.
That's more like.
We're going to do this like 5 more times, so you'll get a feel for how this thing works.
Okay. So where are we with this group? Let's see. Is it still shifting or
Sorry,
stabilizing? Oh, you went forward.
23.
23. Okay. So you see here the curve that is realizing just in this group here. So if you see, this is actually one of the questions in our assessment. And we're going to go through a few questions so you get a flavor for that. By the way, with the kind of questions we're asking are questions that shouldn't be hard to answer if you understand in general what's happening on the plant floor and how you run the plant floor.
So does anyone find this, the results of this room interesting?
I'm surprised 13, 17, and 13 are as high as they are.
I'm surprised that 52 is as high as it is.
Yeah.
If you think about this audience, this is not the general public coming to an event. This is the SESME annual meeting that you guys already are participating or somehow known in smart manufacturing environment. Yet your predominant answer was you just have a basic understanding.
So when we ask about solutions,
But your question is your leadership.
Yeah.
But that's the interesting
Yeah.
point, right? Your solutions you were talking about
So here's the
seem
part.
a little more advanced.
So here's the part that I find super interesting. I think this is an early adopter community. And people always ask about, am I ahead or behind? This is not, smart manufacturing as a topic's been around 15 years. We're at the beginning. Okay, our leadership is at the beginning of this journey. Their ability to consume your storytelling is at the beginning of this. They're not very advanced in general. Now, there are companies, and there's companies in this room that are super advanced, but the rest of this group is there.
When you do this kind of workshop with audiences not in this room, what does that number typically look like? Are people a bit more, our leadership gets it, or?
No, it's in the low. It's in the first, most of the answers for this question are in the first two answers.
Is leadership in the room when you do that?
Yes.
How do they answer?
Low.
How do they take that?
They know that if leadership is in the room, they answer low because they have an openness to learn. When leadership's not in the room and they're answering it, they vote themselves higher because they think they know it all.
And these are results actually from prior workshops and stuff that we've done. So these are some averages up here. And you can see that not totally off to the audience, but moving a little more towards the center of the bell curve. Right.
So it says there's room to grow. So when we
Yeah.
talk about smart manufacturing and why it matters to me, your ability to tell a story is still important. Your audience is not already there.
Now, it could also be that we're a little more honest in this room than in some of these workshops, right? So take that into consideration too. Let's see. Yeah.
Yes.
Back to your model there with those 6 things, is there a size of company that you find to be more receptive, or is there kind of a floor? I mean, you might have a few exceptions, that maybe there's a 2-person company that did a great job with that, but is there kind of a sweet spot or kind of a lower limit?
Yeah. So the lowest that we've gone is around $3 million in revenue and 5 people. The highest we've gone with the same tool has been 20 billion and 30,000 employees.
So kind of where's the sweet spot? Who do you find that they get it, they grasp it, they have the right set of needs that this applies to?
Well, I would say we've gotten nuggets and we've gotten jewels from all sizes.
Yeah, I don't think size has been the determinant.
Because the point is alignment. The point is this survey process, this voting and tooling, and then coming back with the reports. It's not the report. It's the discussion that comes after the report.
But we have seen some ingredients for success is that the champions in these companies, they have a relationship with top management. They've been appointed to do something.
Or Tim, you've done more of the small stuff. You want to say anything about this before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, I've found that the leadership of the small companies, well, with the small companies, one of the advantages you have is that leadership is usually the people that are actually the champions for this. And so you're getting access to the people that are making the decisions and should have the clearest view of what the business is actually doing and so forth.
of the
So-
outcomes wanted and all that.
Yeah, so this is Steve Black with the Manufacturing Extension Partnership. We take big company structures and essentially apply them to small and medium companies, right? Been doing that from lean all the way up through, right? So I get it, 100%. I get it. But it seems like the smaller the company, the more it's dependent on the owner's prerogative, right? I mean, if they are aligned, it's going to make sense, and this is going to work,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But when it's, I'd be interested in your thoughts of when, because there is a piecemeal option, right? There is an a la carte menu somewhere in this. What does that look like? And I mean, when we get to that right point, I'd be interested in that.
But so when we had the chevrons up there, we talked about starting, we put it like most people are in this explore before they move into this formal process, and some piloting and some trying out some technology might be part of that. So they have to be at a point. The other thing we talk about is this education spectrum from awareness to more educated on smart manufacturing, what it could do for you. So somewhere along that journey of getting them comfortable and getting management comfortable with these initiatives. And that's why this is one of the tools in the arsenal, right? So there's several tools.
Tom?
So since we're taking a look at results, I'm interested, how long have you been doing this? What's the sample size? How many surveys have you done? And is there a particular manufacturing vertical that has been more receptive or less receptive, or has it just kind of been a grab bag?
So tomorrow we're actually going to dive tomorrow afternoon deeper into that. But in general, we've done like 60 companies, like what is it, like 1,000?
Around 1,000 assessments in the
something like that.
database. 60 companies gone through the
So
process.
it's statistically significant. When we start slicing, I would still consider it anecdotal per industry slices and who's a little more advanced than other. We're not quite there yet, but we have some benchmarking data. Which one? Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, you first.
Kind of going off the question about size of the companies, instead of size of companies, what about the growth of the companies? Do you find
Growth.
high growth companies problematic or more challenging, or do you find more stable, long run companies to be able to take this assessment and do more with it, or the other way around?
So I actually think growing companies have been a good quality or a good qualifier there because they can think beyond cost reduction into growth. How about you, Jim?
Yeah, I would agree with that. The growing companies tend to be have more urgency.
Yeah.
Because they've got a backlog. They're in a very successful arrangement. They could sell everything they could make. And so if you approach them and said, in 90 days we could double your throughput or we could do some things, they're all over that.
Yeah.
If the company has no growth and is looking at cost pressures and trying to remain competitive to keep the doors open, it's urgent, but less urgent because they can kind of keep doing what they were doing for a while, but they get super excited about growth.
Yeah. Sudarshan, you had a question?
Yeah, that comes through in all of these.
We talk about that in that whole
Yes.
process. So yeah, you did miss a lot, but we'll try to get you caught up. But yeah,
Yes.
definitely value. We've talked about value actually being very central to the whole discussion.
I was just curious, out of those assessments, your process of checking back and their actual progress related.
Yep. So a couple things on the assessment process. It's a moment in time. It's filled out by folks that know what they know. and their maturity is going to change their answer, as well as any action that happens to change their answer. And the one that's the furthest along, we're about to kick off a re-evaluation because they've done a lot of progress. And they want to say, well, how are we now? Did all this stuff hit?
And our rule of thumb is that at least this is a cycle, and if you go back to the chevron, there's a return node, and at least every other year you should be revisiting this. So that's a rule of thumb.
Mike?
You know, you said something earlier, and I think it's important to reiterate that there's more, maybe even more value in the assessment to lead us to asking more questions and understanding than the empirical data itself.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Absolutely, it's fair. So as an example, again, what we didn't tell you, for those who don't know, this assessment process is 100% anonymous and online. So it is not about asking the person that's the digital factory of the future director or vice president or whatever title they have, hey, how you doing? And they answer these questions. Because we know we're going to get a skewed answer. Instead, it's crowdsourced. So we send the survey out. There's roughly 25 questions. We send the survey out to as many people in the organization as possible.
We do ask them, what's your functional role?
We get their functional role. And guess what we get with responses? We get everything. We get contrary responses, totally opposite.
But we can see the distribution. We can see if there's outliers here and there, and we can tell which departments. So it creates a framework for a conversation and further discussion.
And that has been unlimited amount of value.
Yeah.
It's not so much the dot where you are on this survey. It is the spread and the alignment or misalignment of the opinions of the folks that you surveyed.
And so for the company, that self-discovery is also really, really valuable.
Yeah.
It's huge because you sit in a room and you bring people together and you show them the raw data. Like we were picking apart a little bit about why did we think that 52% was the best answer and why wasn't it higher? That's the discussion we're having inside the company. Why did one person say that we're beating our target and our metrics, and the next 10 people said, I don't even know what the metrics are?
So it's a tool to align the team and to have these conversations. And by the way, that starts changing culture, or some light bulbs start coming on as to the urgency, the opportunity. So that conversation has more value than just the numbers.
So that's a nugget in itself.
Okay.
And I will coach my sponsor this, and I will say, do not engage with me on this process unless you want to begin and changing your culture.
Can I ask a question about that? Just go back one slide. There's such an interlink between workforce and culture.
Yes.
When you do these assessments, do you try to do those parts, the workforce and culture assessment, sort of simultaneously, you're close to one another, or?
You're doing it all.
It's all at the same time.
All six. So this is
all these things are happening at the same time.
Don't just grab one.
And the reason that I coach the folks that I'm working with that this is the beginning of a cultural journey is because the methodology we're using on the assessment process is crowdsourced. You've just spammed your entire organization and asked them a ton of questions about smart manufacturing and your digital transformation. If you do nothing with this, you've just set your company back. You've signaled to the organization that you're trying to move. You're trying to shift the culture. And the first signal was you sent a survey to everybody. What are your thoughts? How do you care? So as a facilitator, the first thing I have to do is be Johnny on the spot and analyze all these results, get the insights, and have the discussion with the company immediately so that the people that took their time to fill out the survey understand the train just left the station and here's the first step.
And the tools are facilitating that analysis, and they our evolution for the tools are to even make
Steve?
it easier. So.
So earlier today, we were talking about, ecosystems and, you can't just do smart manufacturing within the four walls of your factory. Have you seen companies yet use the assessment and then actually have some of companies in their supply chain or in their ecosystem also do it and compare to see where they are to help drive not just conversations internally, but to actually facilitate their ecosystem conversations?
One. We've had one so far that said, can we take this process and bring this outside of ourselves? Even though we know we're not very far along, we kind of also want to use this same process for some of our key suppliers.
And we haven't focused on that, but that could be part of the, so tomorrow afternoon, we're going to talk about priorities for evolution. And that's very interesting to get the customer perspective with similar questions and stuff, or to see the supply chain.
But you won't believe how rich the conversations are when you have data staring you in the face that says that your organization's not aligned on these topics.
Now, many companies though do want to get their act together internally before they start going externally with these things.
How many of those 60 companies have moved beyond the discussion?
Oh.
The discussion's super rich, awesome.
Yeah.
How many have moved beyond the discussion and are taking steps?
Yeah, so about half of them have roadmaps of work and capabilities they need to build and invest in. So they're not just stuck in this churn of talking about interesting data. They actually have, here's what we're going to do about it.
And they're starting to track to that roadmap.
And we'll talk, I think we have time to talk about that today.
I think
yet.
so. We're going to have to go a little faster. So we usually we do this workshop in 4 hours. So we're trying to get it done in 3. So we're going to.
Yeah.
Jim, in the assessment, do you also, I assume, I don't see a specific box, is the business situation of that plan, business context, what are their priorities as a plan within the broader company? Is that somewhere captured in the assessment?
It is not captured in the assessment. It is used in the insights. So the assessments are pretty raw, you're just answering a question. And then as we analyze it, we know what business unit, we know what plant, we know what function they're a part of, and we're looking for patterns. And then we'd say, okay, but that plant has a mission, that plant has a strategy, that plant has this. How well is the data that's coming from that factory fit with the rest of the context that you just talked about? Yeah, we let the customer tell us the rest of that story.
So the point of this is some numbers that actually there's a lot of manufacturers still working on strategy and a technology-enabled strategy and a good roadmap. So these have been some of the reasons that we are working on these initiatives. So we want to move on and do the next question on the manufacturing excellence. So when we talk about culture is more manufacturing, excellent culture, continuous improvement, and how much data-driven we are there, it's all part of that. When we talk about workforce, we'll be talking more about how technology-enabled the workforce is.
So you should be seeing, do you leverage data from systems for Lean Six Sigma continuous improvement on your phone? There we go. We got one person voted, so I know it's working. There we go. They're coming in. I have to manually refresh this just to make sure.
How many we got, Jensen? Are we up to 20 or something?
12.
12? Oh, come on, folks. So
16.
Workshop participation.
You know, there's one
Uh-huh.
which is we do not have lean manufacturing practices.
Yeah.
We actually find that out. We do have, that is one of the questions. It's not this question,
So,
but it is
so
one
we're
of our
giving you a
questions.
sampling of the 25 questions. We're not going to go through all 25 today, but that is one of them.
It is one of them. And so this is probably good enough for now.
Okay. So you see here also the bell curve a little shifted to the left, but we are using data towards our problem-solving techniques. That's really well, really good. But how automated we are in that process, how integrated our smart manufacturing and Lean Six Sigma processes are, not so much. So
Yeah, so you look at the very first answer, 25% of the population says we don't view technology implementation as part of our lean practices.
so we're
Kind of
still,
a problem there, right?
So we're still there where technology is not viewed as part of that solution set. So how does that compare to our prior averages here? And you can see that it is pretty similar. Actually, we're similar patterns here.
Yeah, our answers were 1, 2, and 3.
2 and 3.
Reactive, aware, and collaborative.
So we talked about how important data is to what we're doing, right? So let's go ahead and move to the data question. Uh-oh. That was cheating. I gave you a sneak peek.
You should be seeing this now on your phone. Characterize your level of manufacturing data collection. Got one person's been quick on the button. There we go. Look at that.
Look at that.
The word trust is won this one. Or I should say, not trust.
So data not trust. The not trusted is in the second. So
Oh, there we go. Now we're...
you see? So we're collecting data, but maybe metrics are not standardized corporate-wide, but we're doing a little more data collecting, at least towards the metrics, as opposed to we send somebody out to do counts or do a lot of manual processes, right? So there's a spectrum here of how automated we are from collecting data to providing visibility to
So this has been super typical, right? And this is where, I don't know, probably through years of experience, I get a little jaded on following and smelling down the new technology stuff. Do you think this organization is ready for it? If we in this room were this organization, I think I got some basic work to do here. I don't need to be hunting down that $1 million software solution. I got culture and mindset and shifting and people and process work to do before any of that technology is going to do a darn thing.
I need to increase the culture of transparency, the urgency to understand what the metrics are for departments, downstream, upstream department.
So I want to collect data and trust it. I need to do more of that, is what this data would tell me if I was facilitating the conversation. You have some, you don't trust it to make decisions, you haven't standardized your metrics, you got some work to do, and the discussion would be around, obviously it's an opportunity to lever this up. So if there's a SMIP platform, if there's a capability to ingest data more easily, but also the quality of the information, it could actually be trusted to act on, and I could standardize the methodology of metrics that I generate the information from the raw data on, is more standardized and trained across the folks, there'd be a win in there. But to approach the organization, you know, on the surface, you might have thought they could have their act together. The data says there's work to do.
And you can see that this group was a little more ahead of our average, which was more on the data is not fully trusted area.
Yeah, most organizations are not very far along in this journey.
And I think that's where connecting back to value and your outcomes, this is where you have to hold on to it so hard, because when you tell stakeholders, C-suite executives, boards, you're going to have to go back and fix the stuff that should have already been fixed.
Yep.
It kills motivation for initiatives like this.
Yeah.
So having that has to be.
Yeah, so my guidance on that, so totally agree. And my guidance on that is make that discussion winnable. And here's what not winning looks like: a 2 or 3 year project to clean up your act. You'll have lost them in 6 months. How can you break this apart into sprints and agile and do a 90-day push and get your data and metrics squared away in an area that matters? Don't boil the whole ocean. Just get this one going. You've now got people reason to believe, you got them on track, and they go, oh, when's the next section coming? And kind of think about agile and phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4. And yes, the thing might take 2 years to get there, but you haven't lost them along the way.
And here's,
So you are introducing the technology. Like the second round, you said now is not the time to have the technology discussion based on the results. But what you just said presupposes if you're going to collect targeted data,
If this,
and start to prove it out, that you have to have.
oh yeah, for sure. Because, but it was, I didn't lead with technology.
we didn't say which solution. We said data is part of what is needed. This is why. So
Yeah,
it was
and so what you're saying is that to drive my continuous improvement process, or to drive my reduction in losses, I need to have more data than I have today, and I have to be able to trust it to act on it. You then would you would then say, okay, I have reason to do that. I know why the business reason is that I must do that. Then here's how I'm going to parse that into a set of projects. I'm going to use technology all day long to enable some things, but I'm not going to lead with it.
Jimmy just described a step that's much further down the road than what we're talking about.
Correct.
Yeah.
We're at the beginning of the process.
Yeah, yeah. So one simple exercise you can do is like we've done here, is take in a plant and kind of color code. You can do this in your plant, and like which part of the plant is automated and connected and collecting data, which areas have data, the equipment that could be connected but hasn't been connected. And I mean connected to the enterprise, so the data is flowing into the enterprise system. And then what data is legacy or analog equipment? By the way, that we have ways to connect that equipment now and collect data in those areas. And which areas are totally like manual, paper-based, kind of driven processes.
And again, what we're after here is, again, these processes and tools that we're talking about, we developed during COVID. The environment was, how can I lift all boats and I can't walk the plant? The old legacy model of doing this is one-on-one. That's time-consuming, and there's no way you're ever going to get across 400,000 manufacturers. So COVID actually brought us a good problem, and that is, I still want to do the work, but I can't do it the old way. I have to come up with a new way. And you also have to be okay with good enough. So if you had a good enough mindset, I could ask someone, send me your floor plan, or take your plan view of your factory and just highlight where stuff's connected, where stuff's not, and then we'll have the discussion about what part of your process has still gaps that matter, because not all gaps matter. And so, go ahead.
And like another correlation could be, how does this correlate to the areas of high value in your plant? You know, where you have a lot of costs sunk into the product, for example, in this area, or very expensive equipment, processes, highly skilled people. Is there a correlation there? Are you monitoring the easy stuff to monitor, or are you monitoring the high value areas?
And even though we have I think, a very robust process that we can follow and tools that can enable people to help them, remember this, it's based on common sense.
Mm-hmm.
So how many people in this room have common sense? Okay, for those of you, this stuff should seem trivial, just follow the bouncing ball. For those of you that don't have common sense, this is like eureka. This is all gold. But as you think back to it, you just kind of go, oh, that makes sense. And if it doesn't, it should. Because we're not building rocket science into this. We're building good enough into this with common sense.
And do keep in mind that we're collecting data, and dashboards and metrics are part of what we want to do, but we also want to get into that. Remember when we were talking capabilities, we want to get into where we're doing more predictive and more prescriptive, to where we're moving the needle on semi-autonomous processes, using that data to enforce better processes. So let's look at how we're doing at putting an infrastructure in place that lets us do those things. This one's done. You have to share.
Did it drop?
Yeah. It was something I kept forgetting. We have to actually keep sharing one or the other. Okay, now it's up. I have to patch the recording. Okay, how are we doing here on the voting? Again?
This one has turned out to be an interesting question, sort of. Conrad and I went back and forth on this. I don't think this should be our question. Conrad wants it in the survey. So that's my public opinion. And the reason is that for the audiences that I'm working with, most of them don't know what an API is.
Yeah. We do have it on the glossary.
We have it on the glossary, but it's like, they don't even know.
What do you consider a proprietary protocol in this?
There you go.
Yeah. Well,
so
that all.
I'm guessing you lump in MC connector, these like industrial protocols in that bucket.
Yeah.
But
well, and that's part of the conversation too, but it's good feedback. But
so again, this question gets answers that are typically, I don't know what I'm talking about in general. And so when you serve this up, sometimes that matters. Sometimes they should know that, and it should be a healthy discussion. Other times, throw the question away because it's not appropriate for where they are in their journey.
So in all the categories, we have different ways to ask the question.
This is the only question in the whole list that has a couple acronyms still left in it that people go, I hope the controls engineer knows what I'm talking about, but the plant manager certainly wouldn't know what this is even meaning.
Okay, well, it's not that bad. So, so one thing though is that you could, take the opportunity to educate a little more of the stakeholders in some of this terminology, what it means, stuff like that.
And that's why I say, if you're not ready to begin your culture shift, don't start the process.
Yeah.
Because the rich discussion you're having with that company is the answer to these questions. Because every opportunity I have, if there's a blind spot and they don't know what an API is, that's my opportunity to tell them what an API is. It's my opportunity to tell them about OT and IT and connected and integrated and all that kind of stuff. They might have experienced it, but they don't know how to what to name it or how to deal with it.
And I think we're going to find that these are typical results. Let me go back.
How do you deal with I don't know? Because I think that's.
We don't have it as an answer.
Yeah, but do you allow them to skip it?
No.
So you don't have an encounter?
No. So Conrad and I have gone back and forth on this, and we got 1,000 data points now. We have not allowed them to skip any question. We have not allowed them to answer I don't know. So they must answer a question. So think about what that forces into your data. Guess, garbage. And so so the negative is you've got to vet that out. Yeah, so the first step of the process is just get this raw data, determine how ugly or valid it is, and then start picking away at stuff you need to ask more questions about, because it's not making common sense.
So the answers we got were pretty typical towards the left and the maturity on that. But going back, just making a quick point here is that folks think this is really hard, right? And I don't want to oversimplify it, but we do have use cases that a lot of this is affordable. A lot of this can be done in a small time frame. Okay, and we're changing the skills required and making it easier to do. But we've seen projects implemented in a day. Now, that doesn't mean the whole roadmap is done in a day, right? Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Well, that's not helpful. Okay. Sorry, so I've just been told that we started the clock late. So Jim has to leave us, but I'll finish up. Thank you, Jim. And I'll pull. I got other folks here. Tim, you want to come up and help me, or I'll pull you into conversation, or Craig, or whatever. Oh, some folks are in the executive council. Oh, so if you're in the executive council, and that's invitation only, but if you're there, I might have to wrap up. I'm supposed to be there, but I don't know. Well, yeah, so you definitely have to be there. Okay. I'm sorry about that. We should have checked our clock. Okay. I want everybody to witness that it says there I got 24 minutes. But thanks. So the other thing is that this is not a rip and replace strategy, okay? So we want to make sure people understand that there's ways to transition these systems and bring them in slowly. That there's transition points along the way into your legacy systems. And what I'll do is, so how many people here need to be in the executive council meeting? Yeah, okay, whatever, 1, 2, 3, okay. So I do want to talk some points. I'm going to skip some of the questions. But I'm going to just make some points about workforce and supply chain are also important parts of the equation, okay? So we'll skip that question, but similarly, we want to talk about how workforce is part of the equation in augmenting the workforce with technology, helping them get their tools done and their work done with technology. And what we've found when we look at that is that most companies are early in that journey.
So can you just go back so I can see the questions that would typically be asked?
Okay. So we're talking about how much are you using technology to help the worker? Are you helping, is it helping them provide guidance? Are you using, projection for them, or tools that kind of help?
So historically, right, when we think about augmented, we think, as you said, vision systems, guidance systems, things like that. Today, where we're shifting, I know, use ChatGPT as an example, right? Generative AI.
Yeah.
Generative AI can also be an augmented tool.
Yeah.
Too. So would that be included here as well?
Yes, that's why they're pretty general categories. So any technology you're using, but somehow you need to get it to the worker. So somehow there's somebody talking to them, so it's either through a headset or a system in the workstation or something. But how are they getting that assistance, right?
Is there another question related to adopting the tools? Because that's frequently an issue. The companies say, this section of the workforce needs this tool.
Yeah.
And they roll it out without ever asking the question, are you actually going to use it? Or providing the training for them to adopt it? So they do a whole lot of, spend a lot of money, spend a lot of time on some sort of implementation that's never actually implemented. And then the legacy workforce just goes back to doing it the way they know how to do it.
So change management is part of the process we talk about, but we're not necessarily asking in the maturity of change management processes. Maybe we're not asking it that way, but yeah.
We're asking how it's being used.
We're asking more, how it's being used. Is it being used? Does the workforce feel that technology is part of their tool set, right? Not just the drill, not just the machine, but there's other technology helping them get the job done. Yeah, and that's a good point, Craig, and they're empowered to use it. So if you put a dashboard in front of the employee, right, are you also telling them what to do with it? There's ways they can, actually take action because of the data they're seeing, okay? So these are some examples of some of the technologies, right? Okay. So AI-based assistance would be a broad umbrella there. Okay, and then we talked about supply chain resiliency and the importance of that. We have a questions towards that too. What we'll actually have, there's around like four questions in each, 4 or 5 questions in each category. Okay, and we've noticed that supply chain is also on the very early adoption side of the maturity, which makes sense because most companies are taking care of their internal processes before they connect into the supply chain. Okay. We talked about the importance of that. So here's something to think about. We did on purpose. We used two methodologies for exercises. We used the sticky notes, and we used the app. Okay, so I want you to think if we had only used the sticky pads, what opinion you would have, perception you would have of us as speakers, you would have left the room with. Okay? Versus, now you know that we know how to use the technology. We fumbled with it a little bit. But then I want you to think about, so this is reflection on us, think about then workers coming in the door, prospective employees coming in the door to your shop, and the perspective that they get when they look at how you're using technology on your shop. So it's just a mental exercise of looking at the old ways of doing things, the new ways of doing things, that it does matter. It matters to your workforce, it matters to the culture and the perception of how prospective talent that you want to come in the door sees your organization. So, in general, we have the tools to revisit the roadmap. We talked about a little bit about that tool set. Tomorrow afternoon, we're going to dive a little more into the current tool set and its evolution. As you're here today, tomorrow, we have folks, please raise your hand if you're certified with the tool set. So you can see all the people that are in the room. You can raise your hand, Tim. And we have some in process too. But there's plenty of people here that are familiar with the process. Please take advantage of the community, the network. The chances are every other person here actually is familiar with the tool set. Talk to you about it. We have output that gets generated automatically from that, including placing your dots, kind of placing your company in a maturity matrix. We don't start with our maturity matrix in the front of the process and educating a manufacturer in it. We start with the questions, simple questions, answers. We discuss where you're at in the maturity model later. Okay, so we calculate, the tool automatically calculates this. This is an example of that stakeholder distribution. So we can kind of map the average for all the stakeholders, but we use this kind of information to visualize with the team. This is your distribution of answers. By the way, it seems like quality is very optimistic. It seems like your executive management is very optimistic about your position, but maybe your engineering organization is not as optimistic. So you can have those conversations. As we said, more important than the average data point is the span, is that this internal discussion, okay, and bringing those teams into alignment. We won't have time today to go into this napkin math, but we have a tool to do some quick calculations on value. So value, we've discussed how important value is. We find that a lot of the folks, or a good percentage of the folks leading technology projects, are not comfortable talking with upper management about these numbers and value. So we've created tools to make it a little easier. So we call it napkin grade math. This is short. This is not doing full ROI analysis. This is getting orders of magnitude kind of value. And we make sure that you not only know how to talk about cost reduction, but you can talk about the impact of being able to sell more, to make more and sell more. And we provide both numbers, okay? In a lot of those categories, we give you the numbers. What if you can sell more? What if you cannot sell more? So you can have that discussion internally too. Are you constrained in the amount you can sell, or you're not? And we can free up, increase your rate. Okay? So the takeaway here is that it's part of the training, it's part of the tool set to have that conversation, and then link of these technology initiatives to the value. We spend then time with each team to talk about the future state. Important here is that we're not trying to take everybody to the end state here overnight. We talk about what's realistic in the next 3 years to get there. So set a realistic map and set it based on your priorities. And this is an example of how we discuss road mapping. When we started, we were like, okay, give us dates on when you're going to get things done. Now we have learned to talk about what do you want to do now? What do you want to do next? What goes into the future pile? So kind of 3 buckets of priority and time. Okay, and this has helped us really move the conversations forward. What is the urgency to do now for your business? Then what would you do next? And in that discussion, we talk about the dependencies. There's some things you might want to do before others based on your goals. So we do have those technologies. That is part of what the value the coach brings to the conversation. It's like, oh, well, if you consider that you need this kind of infrastructure, you need this kind of building block along the way. Okay? So this is how to get more information about our process. There's one more question I want to ask you today. And we'll make all these slides available to you guys. But final thoughts. One is, I want you to think about 2 new things that you're thinking now that you were not thinking before the session today, okay? Okay, and what's the one thing you're going to go back and share with your team, okay? From what you learned today, okay? So think about that. That's important, and hopefully you have a few things, a few nuggets that you found valuable today. Okay. And I got one more question for you, and this is more about the overall value of this session for you. So I'm going to go through question 7. And I'm going to start this question. Are you seeing question 7? Yes. Okay. Okay, so I appreciate that you guys joined us today. Sorry about our mishap with the timer here. I apologize. Oh, I got to refresh again. Okay, thank you. Thank you for sharing. Questions about the overall process, about the tool set. Tomorrow we will be talking more about it in the afternoon session. Okay.
I think that it's been great information.
Mm-hmm.
And I know the first question I'm going to get when I take it back, right? Because I'm on the technology provider side.
Okay.
Right? And I would argue, propagation of not just this tool, but the entire concept. You got to have the buy-in of the technology providers, because the technology providers have more exposure to the overall audience than the systems engineers and the consultants and so on and so forth. Just, it's just the nature of the vertical, right? But I'm going to go back and I'm going to say, hey, look, boss, this is definitely and by the way, we are approaching this, embracing this kind of approach. I'm going to be like, we're on the right track. We need to stay on this. And he's going to say, what's the timeline between the assessment and the actual implementation of technology? What's this going to do to our sales cycle if we continue along this path?
So timeline. So we've made the tool. So the coach, the consultant, only spends like 24 hours, 34 hours actual time, but it takes about 4 months, I would say, to run 4, sometimes 6 months to run this with a manufacturer, because they're doing it on their own time. What would you say, Craig, about a timeline? Something like that? 3 to 4 months, maybe.
Considering what their technology is.
That's coming out. So that's coming out with the roadmap, by the way. So the roadmap has not identified which exact technology, more like the technology lanes.
Right.
So then, Yeah.
convince them that they're ready to go. When they come to you now, they know enough to be ready to say, okay, we're ready to ask you now.
Then,
It's going to shorten your cycle in beginning
yeah.
as opposed to the implementation.
So this is an investment up front in determining value, getting the buy-in from top management. So by the time they get into selection, you know, and the other thing is we separate who does this. It could be the same person that comes and helps them execute, but it doesn't need to be. It could be you have somebody more strategic that helps them with getting to this point to the roadmap, and then you could have other system integrators come in also and play with the next step on that. Tim, anything you want to add to that?
A technology provider perspective, I don't know that it actually accelerates your cycle. You typically have, just speaking in general for technology vendors, 6 to 9 month cycle to convince somebody that, hey, this is going to provide value.
Mhm.
Go through all the hurdles and so forth and get them to use it. If you're taking 3 to 4 months up front to run this process with the customer, and they're coming out of that with a roadmap that's going to tell them all kinds of different
Yeah.
opportunities that they have,
Uh-huh.
not just focused on the things that you as
Yeah.
a vendor provide. They may come out of that with, oh, I need to do these other things
Yeah. Yeah.
first before I get to that other thing.
So that's a good point, Tim. So they may come out of this saying, I need to do 2 other things before I get back to you. The other thing is, though, let's suppose they hadn't done that study. And the truth is they needed to do 2 other things before they implement your technology, is that they did find out by the time they get to your technology, it'll be a more of a success story because they'll have all of this background done. But yeah, so some things to keep in mind in that.
I would
Great.
definitely second that.
Yeah.
It shortens the time period to successful implementation.
Yeah, to value, the time to value for the customer. For the customer realizing the outcomes that they wanted because, yeah. Yeah. Right. Okay, question?
As a technology provider, sometimes the struggle that we have is that it's hard for us to justify our technology in this whole
Yeah.
smart manufacturing of like how our
Yeah.
technology plays with others.
Yeah.
So this exercise will probably help us in a way that we can tell a better story. And better yet, if we can kind of like say, this is the entire like architecture, how it looks and how the
Yeah.
different players play. And obviously Sesame has a role to play
Yeah.
in that. That will make for an easier sell from a
Yeah.
technology provider perspective that hopefully will cut
Yeah.
down on time.
And then when we go back and we start telling these stories, when we're getting to that phase where we're going to start telling you we've had success stories of all the way into execution. We have success stories into road mapping, but execution, then imagine your solution being part of that whole story, right? Okay. Okay. Well, thank you. That's all I got today. Thank you. Yeah.